What's good? Elite Live Streams. We back with another one, y'all. How you guys doing out there? Salute to everyone who is showing love. All of my new subscribers. We're halfway to 1,000, guys. Appreciate everyone who's been subscribing. The channel is growing. It's doing what it's supposed to. The content is doing what it's supposed to. It's moving around. It's getting out there. But this is what the result is of doing developing stories, right? So let's start from the top, right? A couple of weeks ago, exactly 2 weeks ago, I dropped a video talking about the California bill SB 515. You can find it right here on my channel. Go ahead and check it out. All right. So about 2 weeks ago, I dropped that. It was great information. We were talking about Black lineage. We're talking about the Black American lineage. We're talking about the verbiage that needed to be updated. We're talking about the fact that the bill was not perfect, right? And so, as you know, you go about these things, as the story starts to develop, of course, there will be, some backlash, some people coming back, et cetera, right? So we have had some revisions according to a few different outlets, right? And as well, Amazing Lucas being a very, very big YouTube channel. He picked up this story. I think he dropped the video. Let me look here. He dropped his video 4 days ago, right? So as of 4 days ago, we have an update from the Amazing Lucas. Now, I wanted to show you guys something just so we can kind of all be on the same page here, right? So let's grab this and pull this up for you guys so you guys can kind of see like the timeline on YouTube and how this looks, right? So let's pull this up, right? So boom, and then boom. All right, so if you look on the YouTuber, right, you'll see kind of the timeline, right? So 4 months ago, like I said, Secure the Tribe, salute to him. He dropped a video talking about this, right? The SB 515 Demographic Data Collection Bill, right? He dropped that almost 4 months ago, right? And so the funny thing, I guess, about that is, these are developing stories. So things are going to go how they go, right? So 4 months ago, this story dropped. I picked up on it and I said, let me look into this. Did my research, did everything I needed to do, brought it to the forefront, gave you guys a list, right, of every single bullet point, went through the bill line by line, and as well was on the same page with Secure the Tribe as saying that, hey, man, this thing isn't perfect. There needs to be some, revisions. We got to see what exactly this bill is going to do. And then as well, how do we represent this as Black Americans, right? But from my perspective, I'm always going to feel like forward is good movement, right? But at the same time, you move with discernment and you're watching and you're making sure that everything is in place, right? So I dropped that 2 weeks ago, right? And so as you can see, the views, right? So Secure the Tribe's video, he dropped that 4 months ago and only has 161 views, right? My video, I dropped it 2 weeks ago and it has 2,000, almost 2,400 views, right? So you could see the big difference, right? In how my video was able to get out in comparison to his video that he dropped 4 months ago, right? So we dropped the video, boom, it goes, does what it's supposed to do. A lot of reaction in the comments. Thank you all for who subscribed based on that video. Thank you all for coming through, right? So after that, right, then you have Amazing Lucas dropped his video 4 days ago, right? So this all is kind of just how it works in the YouTube world and the research and, the political realm where, you can go off of one story, that story develops, and then we're on to the next story. We continue to check in. And now that Lucas, he's just dropped his 4 days ago, this would be the most updated, the most accurate to today of what the bill is representing and what it looks like, what it's feeling like, and all that good stuff, right? So let's get into Lucas's video. I'm going to do a reaction to it so we can kind of, go from there, right? Because there was definitely some things that I heard him say in the video. I was very curious to see maybe, how he felt. But like I said, I just showed you guys how the timeline went, right? So if he's doing like I did, then he saw my video, right? Because he had to go and look on YouTube and see, hey, if anybody else is talking about this, he sees Secure the Tribe's video, and then he's going to see my video, right? So both of those things I think are true. And so that kind of brings us to the amazing Lucas and what he has going on. So let's take a look at what his update has to say, which, you know, according to not only him and the research that I've done, there's been some significant updates to this. So let's talk about it.
Delineation. Oh my goodness. So unless you've been living under a rock, I'm sure many of you guys are well aware of the strong push for delineation, for Black Americans to be known as different and distinct from other groups, right? From Africans who are immigrants coming here that, hey, they not like us, all right? We are Black American, we are foundational, all right? We need to make sure that that is known to everybody else. Now, that being said, I have no issue with delineation. I completely understand it. That's gonna have to be, you know, set for any type of reparations, okay? Now, having said that, people are like, Lucas, you don't even know what's going on. There's a woman, Laura Richardson, who put out a bill, SB 515. The push for delineation is here, bruh. It's coming and there is no stopping it. Now, I go on to see that bill, SB 515, that they've been talking about. I found out that it was signed into law by Gavin Newsom. Now, listen, y'all know how I feel. y'all know how I feel about Gavin Newsom, all right?
All right, so off top, you know, I think we all can agree that Gavin Newsom isn't the best person. We understand that. But here's the thing about politics as well that I think, you know, Lucas understands. He's been in the political realm for a very long time. He understands that in order to play ball, you have to work with these people. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. And like, especially the Black American realm is understanding that in order for us to move forward on anything, we have to make sure that we're working with our enemy. Essentially, that's how it has to go, because in order for, you know, any Black Americans from the beginning of our civil rights movement to now have always had to work with people that we did not want to work with, specifically YT people, right? And so having to kind of have that collaboration over time, right, is exactly kind of what a lot of Black Americans are, you know, a little bit exhausted behind, is because as much as we work with them, nothing ever gets done. And that's kind of what the sentiment is. Even when I dropped my video, was there were a lot of people saying like, what's going to happen? This isn't going to lead to anything, and, you know, et cetera. Right. And, you know, justifiably so, because it might not. It's a bill. Right. And that's why in my video, I specifically put what a bill is. Right. And why it is not a written law until we go to Congress, everyone votes it in and all that good stuff. That's why I specifically put that video from Schoolhouse Rocks in there, so that we wouldn't have any confusion about what this is and what it can be, but what it isn't as well, right? And so I think a lot of people, sometimes they get a little caught up on the wording and the verbiage and stuff, and then they just kind of, you know, the dramatization of YouTube, you know, they want to make a little dramatic, you know, reactions to certain things. Some people don't even watch your videos. They just watch, or they look at the, you know, responses in the comment sections. They look at the title of the video, and then they're just going to go off of that. No, a lot of people don't watch the full videos, though. That's kind of what I've started to learn on these YouTube streets here, you know?
Literal Satan in my eyes, a complete POS. Now, anything that Gavin Newsom has signed into law, let me just be perfectly clear in telling you, it's not going to do anything for you, boo-boo. It's not going to do not a damn thing for Black Americans. Let me just be clear. After he gave us all this bull crap with reparations, completely killed the bill, killed a whole bunch of other reparations bill, I know y'all don't expect for him to sign something into law that's actually going to give you any type of tangible, any type of benefit for Black Americans. But
all right, so this is as well what I wanted to speak on too, is the fact that, like, when we organize, especially as Black Americans, right, and there's things that are happening, right, sometimes that nature, right, of always being caught up, right, in the fact that, hey guys, like, we have to make sure that if this person is involved, that this is going to kill the bill and blah, 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 blah. But understanding, like, yo, like, this is the enemy that we've been working with since we were brought here, guys. And to be so naive and to act like nothing will happen unless we work on it ourselves, it's just not going to work. It will never work. And I think that's kind of the ideology sometimes, where it's like, I think I've seen, like I said, when I dropped the video, it was very interesting to see, like, kind of the different commentary that was coming in, mostly positive. But the negative comments were people who were stuck, right, on the fact that, hey, guys, like, this doesn't mean anything. You guys don't think this is going to do anything, right? And listen, that was the point. If you watch the video, right, if you watched exactly what I said when I made the video, right, there was no connection for us to say that this was definitively going to happen. What this is, though, is someone making a certain push to have a certain group represented on these certain, right, classifications, right, being it maybe reparations or for a census, right? And I made that very clear in the video. And I think sometimes, like I said, we get in this like clickbait YouTube space where people don't necessarily deep dive. All they do is look at the title and then they look at the people in the comments, and that's kind of their commentary and how they want to go about their reaction to something. And I think that happens a lot, especially with like people who don't want to deep dive all the way. It's like, oh, Gavin Newsom's part of it. Well, it's over. And it's like, yeah, true, could be. But that's the point of me putting the video up. The video was to raise awareness and say, hey, guys, what do you think about this? This is something that's going on in my neck of the woods that can be about Black American delineation and as well us separating ourselves, right? That's the point of it. But if we're not going to be honest, right, and say that, hey, man, if somebody's a part of it, it's going to be killed. Well, guess what? Every bill that we put into office or we put through any person, whether it be on the Democratic side or the Republican side, it's not going to matter. And that's kind of where we're at right now. It's like, okay, so if every person on the Democratic side isn't, we can't work with them, and every person on the Republican side, we can't work with them, who can Black Americans work with to put a narrative forward for us? That's all I'm asking, because apparently we can't work with anyone, right? Any person who we try to work with, or if we're trying to push a narrative forward, okay, yeah, the bill is going to get killed. And I don't understand how that makes sense, because what we're trying to do is make movements within the government. And we can't do that if we don't work with either of these people. That's a part of it, right? We have to, in order for it to be able to come into law. It has to be worked with through people that we may not necessarily want to work with. That's just a part of business. That's a part of any business, right? Any business, you're going to work with people that you just don't want to work with, right? But the greater good is understanding of me pushing my narrative forward and trying to get to a certain point, right? The light at the end of the tunnel. What is the light at the end of the tunnel? Black American delineation and also reparations for Black foundational Americans, right? So I'm trying to understand where we get to a certain point. Sorry, guys, for the alarm. What the fuck? Yo, sorry for the alarm. But that's just kind of the point where I'm trying to make, is the fact that we are caught up in this like time loop of people constantly saying, hey, this or that. But in reality, we really, really need to know who we're working with. And as well, we have to sometimes work with people we don't want to work with. That's just a part of, any job in general. Job you're working at right now, you probably work with motherfuckers you don't want to work with.
I'll hold my breath, right? I'll hold my, my beliefs, my bias for Gavin Newsom, and maybe he's changed his ways. So I look into it. For those who don't know, Laura Richardson, Senate for California, represents District 35. So that's we looking at Inglewood, we looking at Compton, we looking at Wilmington, San Pedro. That's what she's doing. So she introduced the bill, SB 515, and that's what everyone's been reading. Now, there's a little thing when it comes to bills, for those of you who don't know. The bill that is introduced, 10 out of 10, listen, not even 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10 is not the bill that's signed into law.
I made this clear in my video. This is why, like I said, like if you looked at the timeline, right? If you looked at exactly what I was saying, this is exactly what I was saying in the video. And the thing that was making me upset was there was people coming from his video to my video trying to discredit and saying, are you going to do an update? Like, what's going on? And it's like, yeah, dude, I mean, this is a story that is currently going on right now. This is a developing story. This is a developing bill. This is happening right now in real time. This isn't some speculative, back and forth beef. This isn't us going against, Africans or whatever. This is something that is happening right now in our world, specifically in my district, right? Because like I said, I'm here in Long Beach. So for me, this is a part of my district. I don't know where Lucas is, right? I don't. But this is why I brought it up specifically from my perspective, because this is where I'm at. You feel me? I'm here in this specific district. So from me seeing this come across my blog sphere and me, kind of doing my own research, that was why I brought it to the forefront here on the YouTube streets. And of course, that's what gained steam, right? Because like I said, this video did really well. And I'm almost certain that there was no way if Lucas searched this on YouTube, he wouldn't have seen my video. That's all I'm gonna say. Okay. That's all I'm gonna say.
Just want people to understand that, because I know a lot of people, as I've been telling people, is to educate yourself on politics so you don't get bamboozled, so you don't get hustled, so you don't get got. People have been reading the bill that was introduced by Laura Richardson. Now, I went and looked up that bill. And in the bill, it talks about how they're going to collect data from the residents. I'm like, okay, we're going to find out, who in the area is Black American, who is freedman, right? And then it goes on and talks about freedmen and gives a whole, paragraph about the history of freedmen. And that, hey, this is 4 million Black people, 1865. This is from slavery, whoop-de-whoop. I'm like, all right, this actually seems legit. Okay, this actually seems legit. So I then go and look up to see what the bill was that was signed into law. Rest assured, the bill that was signed into law is very different than the bill that was introduced.
And this is where the update happens, right? Like now we're on the updated side, right? Because like I said, this was a developing story. I did this 2 weeks ago. I dropped the video 2 weeks ago, but Secure the Tribe, his video came out 4 months ago. So this has been kind of going on since, Donald Trump was put into office, basically. And so me giving my update at 2 weeks, at the 2 week mark, his was 4 months ago. And then now Lucas saying this is the one that's the most recent, right? So that's kind of the timeline, right?
All you goofies who keep on reading the bill that was introduced, once again, don't know how politics works. That is not how politics works. The bill, this is something that I keep on warning y'all when it came to Kamala Harris. Now, I know some of y'all don't want, Lucas, why you keep talking about Kamala Harris? The reason why I keep bringing that up is because the same goofies who are praising SB 515 were the same goofies who were lambasting what Kamala Harris was bringing when it came to, hey, her being for reparations. Now, she didn't say anything about cash payments, but she said, hey, there has to be some form of reparations for these group of people. That's what
I think, yeah, and see, and that's where I think sometimes Lucas, he gets very, very he brings himself into a certain space where he basically shows his allegiances, right? Because we all know he does come from that conservative background, right? And so him being on that right side for a really long time, him and Candace Owens going through the Brexit and all that, his past, right? That is still in him, right? And he still has those type of ideologies, right? And of course, me being more on the independent side, I think sometimes when you see people who are indoctrinated in the right versus left ideology, whether they leave it or not, it's still in them, right? And they still move with that certain level of consciousness. And I think that's where Lucas is. Lucas, he has such a huge platform, right? But a lot of his platform is very contentious in the sense that he's got so many people that supported him from the right, and then he switched, and now these people who consider themselves left, but he kind of speaks against that too. So you have a lot of that in his comment sections, just people who are, on both sides kind of arguing with one another, and then you have people who are kind of in the middle. So it's a very hodgepodge collection of people, and I think sometimes he has to be in that space. And this is also something I wanted to speak on too, is a lot of people in this space, I can see how it's very easy to become a panderer, right? Because what happens is some people are just so hyper fixated on being right that they will never come back and say, hey, man, you know what? This is a developing story, or this has to be this, or mine is more matter of fact. I'm not that type of creator. My videos and this channel, how I'm building it, is all based on real-time things that are happening right now, and my commentary based on that from my own personal experiences. I'm not here trying to, pander to one side or the other, right? If you like what I'm saying, then you'll subscribe to my channel, right? And if you like how I, present things and put the facts in forward, and then as well giving you your own room to make your own conclusions and come with your own opinions, that's my channel. That's how I like to go about things. But some people, like I said, they're caught up in like always being right, always making sure that they have, the final word, or that their, video or, perspective is the end all be all. And it's just not that simple, nor is it that, easy to come to a conclusion on something that is happening in real time.
It has to happen. Now, in addition to that, she talked about the black man agenda, right? Where she had a plan for a black man agenda. Now, people, the same goofies, mind you, were talking about, oh, this is bullcrap. They didn't do nothing for black men. Oh, she did collard greens in the bathtub. She's not really black. Oh, she's not talking about cash payment, and completely threw her under the bus. Now, the reason why I didn't do that is because I understand how politics works. Okay, you start off vague, and then after you get into office, we narrow it down. All right, vague for the general election because you don't want to spook, white people. You don't want to spook Asians. You don't want to speak the.
I think I want to skip this part because it's kind of not exactly. All right, there we go. Let's go to the issues part.
That being said, we go back into the bill. Now, the bill that was passed, that was signed into law by Gavin Newsom, very different. Now, I want to bring up three changes that I think are very crucial to what was done to the bill. First change is that they crossed out residents and put employees. Right there, bruh. Right then and there, we have just completely crippled the bill.
All right. So from my perspective, like I said in the video, the original video, I didn't know exactly what the overall objective was for the bill when it first came out. I didn't know what the objective was, right? We said, is it for reparations? Is it for a census? Is it to collect data for, employment? I said all those things in my video, right? And so, yeah, that I feel completely in alignment with that. Like, yeah, I think at this point that determines that it is definitely for the census. Like, we're trying to get data for people who work in specific, sectors. Maybe it be, all sectors, and they just want to see who classifies as what within those job ranges, right? Because clearly, if we're doing employment, then that has nothing to do with reparations at all.
Crippled it. We watered it down immensely because now we went from everyone to employees. Okay, so you mean those who are employed. All right, many Black Americans are employed. Not that big of a deal, right? But then they follow it up with, when it comes to origins, the ethnic origins of persons, they cross out persons and put what? They put those employed by the city or the county.
Yeah, so I mean, of course, that's going to be census data. I mean, that's pretty straightforward.
Now, what that does is that means unless you have a government job, boo-boo, you are not going to be counted. Come on now, dog. That's how that works, okay? Unless you have a government job, unless you are employed by the city or the county, the data that they collect for freedmen, for Black Americans who are descendants of chattel slavery, you are not going to be included in that data. It's only government employees.
Right. So I would assume, right, that at that point, you know what I'm saying? If that's the case, we continue to put out the information, right? The information continues to come down, right? That's how these things go.
Now, riddle me this, Batman. How does that help with anything about reparations? It doesn't. Okay, it doesn't. Because how I see it, because when you look at bills like this, you have to also look at how can they use this and be deceitful? How can these demons be malicious and be harmful, right? Because they've never done anything for our benefit. Never. Okay. Ostensibly, the veneer may be like, well, we're doing this for you guys. Okay. That's what we're doing. We just want to help you all out. All right. That's never the case. That's never how it's implemented. So I'm thinking if they go and get all this data on freedmen government positions, they can simply say, well, look, there is no disparities going on with Black Americans who are descendants from slavery. I don't know what y'all crying about. They seem to be, well employed, and there's many of them that are represented in the workforce. Now, what they also leave out is those that aren't in government jobs.
Now, I want you guys to understand that right now, what he's doing, this is all hypotheticals, right? Like, I could do this, right? I could talk about what exactly they're going to do, what's exactly going to happen, what could happen. You know what I'm saying? But that's like I said, that's the YouTube theatrical aspect of this is, hey, I don't necessarily know. None of us do. And I make that clear on my channel. On my video, I make it clear that I have no idea what this bill will lead to or what will happen. But what I will do is give you guys the information to make your own judgment about what you see and what will happen moving forward. That's pretty much it, right? Is the understanding that, hey, like, of course, this is information, this is great information, and I need this to, get out there. But at the same time, it's not me saying this is going to be a definitive thing. They are going to definitively do this or that. And I think that's where sometimes we get into the YouTubeization of things, where it's like everything has to be a fight. Everything has to be contentious. Nobody's taking this from a journalistic standpoint where we're saying this is a developing story. And as we go through the story, the new developments we will speak on, right? But that's not necessarily, I don't think, what Lucas does. Lucas has a very dramatic way about how he goes through things, very old school YouTube, where it's like everything is grandiose and whoa and very, very dramatic and very animated. You feel me? And so that's his approach, right? That's what resonates with him, the over exertion and the very out there energy. But in reality, like I said, this is all just speculation. I could get on here and speculate just as much as him. That's basically what this is right here. It's all personal.
They also leave out is education, healthcare, housing. That's what they leave out. So by them switching residents to employees, that is the hustle. That's what Gavin Newsom signed into law. Next thing is that we have freedmen. You remember that big old paragraph where they gave the history of freedmen? That's all gone. That's all gone. So the reason why I like that, because it was very specific as to who and what freedmen came from. 4 million, 1865, slavery, United States, right? These were points that you couldn't muddy up the waters. You can say, well, we want to change that. No. That was there. They removed all that, bro. Now, the issue I have with that is that they didn't do that for any other bill. They didn't do that for the recent bill that Newsom signed for immigration. They had Latinos in the bill. They explained how many Latinos.
And this is true. And this is what, me and Secure the Tribe made clear, that once they started to change that verbiage, then there's a problem. And I think we both made it clear in our videos that, hey, this is a problem. We are not okay with this, and that this needs to be changed, right? And so I think all of us are on the same page with that. But it's also crazy that they took out the entire paragraph now. So we gotta talk about that, because at the end of the day, if that's gone, that definitely changes the bill. It changes it into something that does not benefit Black Americans. And that part, I definitely am against that. And, I have to agree with Lucas again on this, because bro, this is ridiculous.
There was when it came to immigration and, stopping the ICE and everything. They didn't do that for that bill. They didn't do that for as far as the COVID-19, also known as the Stop Asian Hate Crime bill. They had a whole history of the Asians that were attacked and the history of going on discrimination of the Asians. They didn't do any of that. But when it comes to a Black American bill, they erased all that history, bro. They erased it. And what they did is they referenced a government code, which was, I think, 8310, right? The government code. That's what they go and reference. Now, for those of you goofies who, once again, aren't aware of 8310, 8310 actually does what y'all been crying about, delineation. It makes a distinction between those who are Black Americans, who are descendants of chattel slavery, African Americans, and those who are not. Those who, who are, immigrants here, they come from Africa and they have no ancestry to, in this country. That distinction was already made. That government code, 8310, that was created in 2022, pimpin'. Do you not understand? That's already been made. Now, what SB 515 does is that it uses that government code that was established in 2022 and now applies it to the city and the county. That's all that it does when it comes to data.
Yeah, like I said, I think sometimes it's just, it's long-winded, but it's the same point. Yeah, I think, let me see, is there more to this? He says, but let's see what he says on the last part.
Be politically savvy. The same savviness and the same understanding you have of the NFL, of the NBA, of boxing, of the UFC, that has got to be applied in politics. Because while all these Negroes is celebrating the bill, that is not the bill that was signed into law. And
all right, so yeah, I think that's kind of the gist of the video. Overall, though, I think Lucas is, like I say, he's a funny guy. He's a very dramatic guy, but I don't think he said anything that we didn't say in our videos. And the fact that, we all had a pretty similar problem with what was going on and how, certain things weren't being represented. But at the same time, like, I have to be clear and say that, like, hey, like, I don't know exactly, I don't know exactly who he was calling goofies and who all that stuff. I don't know about that. You feel me? I don't. But what I will say is this, right? Let me pull this up again. When you look up SB 515 and you Google it on YouTube, right? Right at the top, right up here, right? The first video that comes up is Secure the Tribe, right? The second one is my video, right? So I know how YouTube works. I know how people are on YouTube and they go off of views, right? So initially they're going to look at, just from the search, they're going to look at Secure the Tribes and look, oh, I don't know. And then they're going to go to my video that has more views and they'll click on that, right? So like I said, I don't know necessarily what he means by that, right? I don't. But what I do know is that, I don't think I'm goofy at all. I do not think that this bill has anything that we didn't speak on, right? And then we went out of our way to make sure that we were being pretty direct about how you should approach these things with a wait and see mentality. And then at the same time, like, the goal always is to make sure that we're bringing stuff to the table that we can talk about that's going on in our world, right? Because that's what I do over here on my channel. You feel me? And so when I brought this, video together and I made this video, it was all based on real-time actions and what could happen on, like, an overall grand scale. Where is this going? What are we going to do? Black Americans, how are we going to be able to make it through, right? Well, I think now, you know what I'm saying? Now that we've kind of reached that level, it's, looks like it might not be what we thought it was. And that's okay. You feel me? Because at the end of the day, this is what happens. You feel me? You go through things. Trial and error will always apply, right? Putting yourself out there, seeing what could happen and what could come back. You know what I'm saying? And I think at this point, we've all kind of, taken that perspective when it comes to this. And, like, I will continue to keep an update for you guys. You know what I'm saying? Right now, it definitely doesn't look good. We'll say that for sure, right? Based on kind of the information that just came out and, of course, the revisions, and now, people, kind of queuing in on this. I think it's important that we stay updated on this, and we're going to keep our eyes on the prize. We're going to make sure that we stay locked in on this because it's important. And so, yeah, I just want to hop on here real quick. This isn't going to be, long, drawn out live. This was just to make a reaction and update for my people who are, subscribed to my channel. So, yeah, man, thank you guys for always showing love. Really appreciate everybody who's, like, been coming through, liking and subscribing. You guys have been showing so much love. Like I said, we're halfway to the goal. Make sure you guys continue to show love and support, man, because we're getting there, man. We are over 500 subs. It's growing, and it's growing in the right direction. I love what's happening over here on our channel. We're doing the right things. We're getting the right views. We're getting the right reactions. I'm not in, like, a weird algorithm. I feel like I'm in a good algorithm right now. So I just got to stay in the algorithm, keep pumping, keep making these stuffs consistently. And we'll see what happens later. You know what I'm saying? But salute to everybody out there. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. My name is Brandon B. This is Elite Media, and I'm out. Peace.